Hello, welcome to this session. So in this session, we'll be talking about the CSS display property with values of inline block, and none. So by default, HTML has a default display value for different elements. Like for the inline, we have elements like the span, the I, the EM, and strong. Then for the inline block, we have elements like the img for the image, inputs, and text area. Then for the block, we have elements like from h1 to h6, the div, the header, footer, and paragraph. So we'll be starting with the inline. So let me create a span element. So I've created a span element. So inline elements do not start on a new line by default. So let me create another span element to demonstrate this. So when I create another span element, you can see that it did not start on a new line. It continued from where the last content on the page is. Then I've already created a style sheet, which is this on styles.css. I linked it to this HTML page. Then I created an image. I've put an image in this project which we'll be using. So let me go ahead and close this. Then go to the CSS file. So let me clean this so that it will be easy for us to understand what we'll be talking about next. So if I go to the styles.css, let me select the span tag, then give it a background of background color of let's say blue. So you can see that inline element only takes as much width as its content. So you can see the background is only covering the content. So that's the width of the span element. It only takes the width of its content. Then if I try to give it a set a width for it, let's say I'm giving it a width of 100 px, then giving it a height of let's say any value at all, you can see that setting the width and height does not take effect for span elements. So let's talk about the inline block. So let me go ahead and clean this, then go to the HTML page, then clean this. So we'll be using the image as example. So I'll create an image element. Then we have a file there called wood. So like inline element, the inline block does not start on a new line. So if I repeat this image element here, you can see that it's appending to the content that was there before. So the inline block does not start on a new line, and as well it allows other content to be beside it. Like I can give this if I create a span, for example, then put content inside it, you can see the content I put inside here is showing here. So the inline block does not span the full width. It only takes as much width as it can. But the only difference between the inline and the inline block is that I can set width and height. So I'll demonstrate that by going to the CSS file. Then I'll select the image. Then if I give it a height, let's say 100 px, you can see the height is taking effect. Then I can give it let's say it's 200 px. Then for the width, I can set a width property for it, let's say 150 px. So for the inline block, we can set width and height property for it. So let's talk about the default block element. So I'll be using a div as an example. So let's clean this file. Then if I go to the index.html, let me clean this in as well. Then create a div element, then give it just a unique content, or let me just write div. So in this div, if I go to the CSS file and select it, so for the block level element, it spans the full width. So if I give it a background color of let's say yellow, you can see that it's spanning the full width, and block level elements start on a new line. So if I decide to create another div, for example, or let me use a p tag. So if I create a p tag and put a random content inside it, so let me format this file. So you can see that the it started on a new line here. It didn't go to join any other space that is left by the div, and also the block level element takes up the full width, so it cannot share its width with any other element. For the block level element, I can set the width and height for it. So for the div, I can give it, let's say, a height of let's say 200 pixel. Then I can set a width for it as well. Let's say I'll give it a width of 100 px. So we can set height and width for block level element. So these are the default behaviors of the HTML inline block and block element. So but with CSS, we can override those values. Let's say, for example, let me clean this and go to the HTML file. So by default, let me clean this now as well. So by default, the span is an inline element. So let me create a content for it, then go to the CSS file. So let me give it let me select the span and give it a background. Let's see, I give it a background of background color of yellow. You can see that if I give this span a height, let's say a height of 100 px, then give it a width of 100 px, that nothing is happening, because by default the span can only take as much height and width as its content. But if I come here and give it a display of something like block, so you can see that the span element is now having height and width, and is now behaving like a block level element. So if I go over here now and create let's say an eye element, then let me just give it element, you can see that the span is now behaving like a block level element by not allowing any other content to be beside it. So if I'm to change this from display block to display inline block, you can see it's now behaving like an inline block by it having a height and a width and allowing another content to be beside it. In CSS, you can actually change the behavior of any element by using this display property. So if I go to the HTML page, let's say I have a p tag, then let me say I put a random content inside it, lorem, then go to the CSS, then if I give this p a background color of let's say red, you can see it's taking the full width. So I can override the default behavior for it by giving it let's say a display of inline. If I give it a display of inline, you can see that it's no longer behaving like a block level element. You can see it's now acting like an inline element. We also have another one, which is the value for the display none. So for the I tag that for the I element that I created there. So if I go to the CSS here and select the I element, then if I give it a display of none, you can see that the element disappeared from the page, like it never existed. So it's different from visibility hidden. Like if I'm to change this to visibility hidden, so let me clean this one up. So you can see that the content is hidden, but the space for it is being left. You can know that something is missing here. So by using display none, it automatically makes the element to disappear like it never existed. So you can use the display property in CSS to override the default behavior of any element. Thank you for watching to the end of this video. Please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, then hit on the bell icon so that you can get notification anytime I post a video. So see you in our next class.